Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing, and finally, we've got tornadoes to talk about with a conditional tornado threat expected to materialize tomorrow, central and southern Iowa, right along a warm front that's forecast to lift north. Basically, a pseudo surface low that's going to eject to the northeast, associated with a 40 to 50 knot southwesterly low level jet over this warm frontal zone. And if that materializes, a line of storms is going to develop along the cold front, and anything within that warm frontal zone in the path of that surface low, that pseudo surface low, is definitely going to have the potential for a tornado threat. This is the target area that I've outlined for the greatest tornado potential, and that includes the Des Moines area. I'm considering heading east. In fact, I'm probably going to head east today. Anyway, I was considering intercepting the winter storm up in the Sheridan, Wyoming area, but it's October. If there's a tornado threat, you chase it, especially when it's up in Iowa. I remember years ago in 2004, that big time outbreak right around Halloween in central Iowa. I went up there, missed all the tornadoes, but you always chase dynamic systems like this. And there are winter storm alerts as well across the Dakotas. Eastern parts of Montana, northern Wyoming as well. The Sheridan, Wyoming foothills are going to see 8 to 10 inches of snow. That's the area I was targeting for winter weather. But this is the target area for a tornado threat tomorrow. Many of the same areas that were impacted by the derecho back a few months ago still are recovering there in the Cedar Rapids area with those winds near 130 miles an hour associated with that. So this is that pseudo surface low zone that's going to eject off to the northeast. There is going to be lee cyclogenesis as well near the Colorado-Wyoming border. Some windy conditions associated with this dry cold frontal passage that are going to ramp up the wildfire potential again across the Colorado foothills. Red flag fire warnings are in effect across the Colorado foothills and parts of the Front Range beginning at noon today. So here in about 15 minutes, the winds are expected to ramp up. And that cold frontal passage, the lee cyclogenesis, the ramp up of those winds, the increase in temperatures between now and when that snow threat arrives on Saturday night through Sunday, definitely looks like there's a red flag fire as well. And these are those winter weather alerts. The purple, those are winter weather advisories. The pink, winter storm warnings. And then you've got the winter storm watches off to the east, straddling the North Dakota-South Dakota border. That's the Wednesday night through Thursday system into central and northern Minnesota as well. Double-digit snowfall totals expected there. And you can also see the new winter storm warnings that have been issued in north central Wyoming. We're just going to gloss over these winter weather alerts, show you a couple of the snow maps as well. This is the main stripe of snow that's going to impact northern South Dakota, central and southern North Dakota, including Fargo. Maybe Grand Forks could get in on the action. These are winter storm watches. This is going to be the snow tomorrow. But down here is what I'm watching for that tornado potential down in the warm sector in central Iowa. That's as that warm front's going to be lifting up to close to the I-80 corridor. I'm going to chase those tornadoes, then come back to Colorado and chase the winter storm threat in the Colorado foothills expected on Saturday night through Sunday. Hopefully that'll provide just a little bit of relief for these wildfires. But there is the red flag fire alerts throughout the Colorado foothills. And I actually just got a notification from Loveland Ski Area that they've got a temporary closure with no national forest access allowed except for emergency personnel to help fight these fires. That's the first time I've definitely seen that. They're saying that these are unprecedentedly favorable conditions for wildfires. Very dry out there, a ton of fuel as well out there to fuel these wildfires. But that's going to be a big concern out here in Colorado. And many of those are actually, the Cal Wood Fire is dangerously close to Boulder, crossing Highway 36 just to the north of the Boulder area. So definitely a scary situation out here in Colorado, and hopefully we can just make it to Saturday night into Sunday when there could be several inches of snow across the Front Range. We'll also break down that threat as well. But first, let's talk about the severe weather threat in Iowa tomorrow. This is the forecast for 21Z. Tomorrow, basically 4 p.m. Central Time. Here is that warm frontal zone lifting up pretty close to the I-80 corridor. That pseudo surface low will be pretty close to the Des Moines area by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Upper 60s dew points south of that warm front, and the winds are also going to be pretty backed along this boundary. And with a southwesterly low-level jet of 40 to 50 knots just over top of it, these back surface winds out of the due east right along that warm frontal zone are going to enhance that low-level shear that much more with that low-level jet. This is the surface pressure field, surface wind field as well. and then looking just above the surface, about a kilometer up, you can see that southwesterly low-level jet right over that warm frontal zone. This is the pseudo surface low lifting up to the north of that warm front, but that warm front will be lifting up to near the I-80 corridor by about 4 p.m. I expect thunderstorms to erupt along the cold front, and any of those storms that slide by this warm frontal zone right at the surface will have a chance to produce tornadoes. This is the Pivotal Weather website as well, a great place to visualize these severe weather parameters. This is the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, and notice how it is maximized, of course, in the stable air to the north of the warm front. Down in the unstable air, where those dew points are in the 60s, you have a rapid decrease in the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. That's because you lose those easterly winds that are along and north of that warm frontal zone, and you have more veered surface winds out of the south-southwest direction, basically parallel to that warm front. But this to the north, extreme low-level wind shear, that's going to be the stable air. So a good tool to find where they overlap is using a parameter like the Energy Helicity Index. This is the 0 to 1 kilometer EHI. Basically, this factors in surface-based CAPE and also 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. So this gives you a good indication of where the thermodynamics and the low-level wind shear overlap. And this definitely shows that warm frontal zone materializing there in central Iowa. By about 7 p.m. it slides to the east, mainly to the east of the Des Moines area, but by 4 p.m. likely going to be storms erupting just to the west of Des Moines, interacting with this warm frontal zone. And if you do pick a sounding right in that area, the warm frontal zone where those thermodynamics overlap with the wind shear and the 40-knot low-level jet out of the southwest at 1 kilometer. There's the hodograph. Let me make sure you can see it on here. Looks like my head is covering it up. So I could show you this hodograph in the upper right portion of the screen. All of this area, there's the storm motion vector. So the storm motions are going to be quite fast, east-northeast at about 40 miles an hour. Still manageable, though, out there for this time of year. You can see the 1 kilometer wind out of the south-southwest at in excess of 40 knots. That's the low-level jet. And all of this area in the hodograph curve, that is between this storm motion vector and the shear vectors that comprise the hodograph, this is all proportional to storm relative helicity. This is the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, the area within the 3 kilometer shear vector curve in the storm motion vector. That's the 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity. And this is the critical angle, which is that angle between the 0 to 500 meter or 0 to 1 kilometer shear vector and the storm motion vector right here. That angle, you want that to be as close to 90 degrees as possible, but still with these strongly shear dynamic fall season systems like this, a lot of times you can make do with the 45 degree angle or so, a critical angle. This is the streamwise vector here, definitely a long one of those. Research really hasn't shown much of a relationship between the length of this vector and tornado potential, but in these very dynamic systems, a lot of times these can compensate for a lower critical angle. But this is a textbook hodograph for a tornado producing supercells in Iowa there. Definitely a dynamic system with these 40 to 50 knot winds between the 1 kilometer and the 3 kilometer layer. Looking at the thermodynamics, notice how this dry elevated mix layer, or EML, coming in here at the mid-levels of the atmosphere. The green line, that's dew point. The red line, environmental temperature. The dashed line is that parcel ascent, showing you what a theoretical parcel, or basically a hot air balloon, would experience if it retains these thermodynamic properties at the surface. And notice how it easily overcomes this capping inversion near the warm front. So I do expect surface-based storms to erupt at about 4 p.m. just to the west of Des Moines. And anytime you get this dry slot of air coming in at the mid-levels at about 500 millibars, that acts to steepen the lapse rates, or the rate at which the environmental temperature decreases with height, and that creates a very unstable situation. Oftentimes in your storm chasing, you'll see that clear sky emerge off to the west, and then you start to see those cumulonimbus towers and the anvils begin to overspread your location. Warm, humid air at your back. That dry air at the mid-levels is caused by this elevated mix layer, or dry slot, coming around the south and the east side of the upper level trough, and that's what contributes to that cape and the steepening of the lapse rates and the development of surface-based supercells out there but the thermodynamics are definitely favorable. You've got a 76 over 68 type of a low-level profile. Cape's pretty close to 3,000 there just to the south, along into the south of that warm front. Look at the turning wind direction, the speed shear here with a 50-plus knot southwesterly low-level jet. And near the warm frontal zone, those surface winds are actually out of the due east. So any storm that's able to retain being surface-based as it slides by that warm frontal zone will definitely have a chance of even dropping a significant tornado up there across central Iowa. That includes the Des Moines area, that warm frontal zone along the I-80 corridor. But this is the NAM, still waiting for the 18Z HRRR to kind of give us an idea of the convective mode. Let's look at the supercell composite just for the hell of it. Double-digit supercell composites here along that warm frontal zone just to the south, near and south of Des Moines. These Iowa warm fronts can be nasty. You got to keep an eye on them this time of year. This is when they produce tornadoes, and look at all these parameters maximizing right at peak heating, right at about 4 p.m. A lot of storm relative helicity up there. This is a 0 to 3 kilometer EHI. We'll pick a sounding right in the bullseye of that. Yet another textbook photograph, 76 over 68. A critical angle that's even more favorable, and with a slightly deeper trough and maybe even a backing of that low-level jet to more of a south-southwesterly direction would yield an even more favorable photograph because you'd get that critical angle right at about 90 degrees. But I'm definitely thinking about chasing this. I'm probably going to leave here in a couple hours, head east in Dominator 4. The live storm chasing is made possible by the Facebook supporter community. I have that linked in the text of this live. I really appreciate everybody that are making this live storm chasing and our Team Dominator research possible. I'm definitely going to bring the subsonic sensor out here as well and try to get some up-close infrasound data from a tornadic supercell out here. But this is a textbook photograph with the area within the 1 kilometer and the 3 kilometer shear vectors and the storm motion vector proportional to 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity and that 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity respectively. So there it is. There's definitely a lot of CAPE out there. We could even look at the significant tornado parameter. I'm not a big fan of looking at these composite indices, but definitely it is there. Non-zero, significant tornado parameter, 1.5, greater than 1, right along that warm frontal zone. It's a good area to kind of show where that most favorable area is for supercell storms. Looking at surface-based CAPE, you've got CAPE in excess of 2,000 at the surface, even approaching 3,000 there in central Iowa, as that elevated mix layer is overspreading this zone. Let's look at the upper levels or mid-levels, 500 millibars as well. Plenty of bulk shear, 50 to 60 knots in fact, in the vicinity of that warm front. More than sufficient to get supercell storms and mesocyclones out there. Let's see if we have the HRRR to get an idea of what the convective mode is. Since there are a lot of storm chasers messaging me about the chaseability of this setup, I assume that it looks quite favorable on the HRRR. These are always weird kind of gravity wave deals there that precede convective initiation. So there's the initiation of these supercell storms. It looks like near and just to the east of Des Moines. This is at 23Z or 6 p.m. Central Time. There is a chance there could be a little bit earlier initiation than that. I wouldn't be surprised if supercells initiate a little bit closer to 4 p.m., closer to the Des Moines area. But this definitely has the cold front erupting at about 6 p.m. Favorable photographs as well out ahead of it with that 40 to 50 knot low-level jet. I'm definitely considering chasing this setup. These could be little line segments that are racing by with tornado warnings, but they also could be bean-shaped supercells tapping into that extreme low-level wind shear along the warm frontal zone. This supercell is probably a little bit to the north of that warm frontal zone up there. Yeah, definitely extreme photographs that get even more favorable as you go a little bit further north and east along I-80. Iowa City definitely could be in that tornado zone as well. I probably should have extended this just a little bit further to the east. Then it looks like at 7 p.m., the HRRR is telling us that that front will have a tendency to undercut convection that's moving parallel to it or a little bit normal to that front. It looks like the front's going to accelerate, and many of these storms are going to be undercut by that cold frontal boundary. So it definitely is a narrow window. It's a long drive out there, about 8 hours or so to the west side of the risk. but it's been a long time since we've chased tornadoes. Definitely am feeling this tornado threat. If this was a bit more compact of a surface low and a deeper upper level system, like a bowling ball vortex punching into this, you'd see an even more backed low-level jet and an increased tornado threat here across central and eastern Iowa. But still, even with the shape of the system the way it is, with the relatively veered low-level jet, this warm frontal zone lifting up to I-80 corridor, that's going to lead to quite backed surface winds out of a near due east direction out there in central and eastern Iowa, and that's why we're definitely interested in this setup. Looks like the 18Z HRRR is just about to come out. It'll be interesting to assess the timing of convective initiation. If it is just a little bit earlier, further west, a little bit more daylight to work with out there in Iowa if these develop at about 4 or 5 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. So I do expect as the 18Z RRR comes out, the 0Z models as well, I expect there to be earlier initiation. Looking at the cap strength does not look incredibly robust out there tomorrow. So it's definitely, it looks chaseable, this setup. And look at the NAM. Actually does have a much more compact surface low coming in to western Iowa, and even intensifies the surface low from 21 to 0Z with a more backed low-level jet here north of the I-80 corridor, northeast of Des Moines at about 0Z. Looking at a sounding here just to the east of that surface low. You can see just how stable it is to the north of that warm front. Temperatures in the 40s up there. Crazy looking photograph, definitely indicative of that colder air, even a northerly component a bit at the surface. So that is definitely a mitigating factor. A negative factor for this setup is the stable air immediately to the north of that warm front with temperatures in the 40s up here and then dew points rising into the mid to upper 60s. Look at that extreme photograph, but quite a bit of a capping inversion at the low levels as we get towards 0Z, and a likely a tendency for storms to get undercut by that cold front with the cold air winning out just a bit. But incredible extreme wind shear that will likely cause these supercells to drill through any stable layers in the vicinity of the warm front, maybe just to the north of the warm front as well. So this is an incredibly extreme photograph of the back surface winds. Nearly calm, due south at about 15 knots here at the surface. Then just above that, you got a 50-knot low-level jet, a kilometer above the ground out of the south-southwest, and then plenty of bulk shear with those mid and upper level winds of about 40 to 50 knots up there above it. So that's why I have this target area here across central Iowa. I do expect the initiation to happen a little bit earlier than the 12Z HRRR was showing, probably about 4 or 5 p.m. near and to the southwest of the Des Moines area. Those could easily be tornado producers as well. And that warm front is expected to lift north of the I-80 corridor in eastern Iowa as we get closer to evening, 6, 7 p.m. That warm front could lift north of Iowa City. But look at all these easterly winds out here in the vicinity of that warm front, ramping up that storm relative helicity with that southwesterly low-level jet at 40 to 50 knots over top of it. I should expand this conditional tornado threat east across eastern Iowa as well, now that I'm looking at some of the model analysis in a little bit more detail. I also want to show you the general shape of the upper level system. So I'm going to expand out just a bit, get an idea. Normally you want to start out with a general view of the whole. Shows a big warm sector, even with some decent 0 to 3 kilometer EHIs all the way down into the eastern Texas Panhandle. I know that the marginal threat extends into northern Missouri. Let's take a look at a sounding here just for fun at 0Z in the eastern Texas Panhandle. And there's a chance of even a tornado threat down here. This looks like for an easterly or a southeasterly mover, quite favorable photograph there in the eastern Texas Panhandle. This is why you're getting those elevated values of 0 to 3 kilometer EHI. The dew points mix out a bit. Dew points are lower, near 70 there. You can see a capping inversion that might act to limit the convection just a bit. But you chasers that live in Norman may want to consider heading out to the eastern Texas Panhandle. Not sure if there's going to be any storms, but it does look like a little wave, just a bit of vorticity advection over there, creating some lift Here's the general trough that's also prompting the winter storm conditions from Montana, northern Wyoming, into northern South Dakota and southern North Dakota there. This is also going to cause our tornado potential there to be in Iowa, but look at how the low-level jet ejects rapidly to the northeast. This is why we want to target Iowa and not further down the line in eastern Kansas. You have more unidirectional flow from the surface up to that low-level jet aloft. And it's possible sometimes on the back side of these systems you can get a little bit of backing and some more enhanced low-level shear. But one negative factor for the Texas Panhandle target is this crashing cold front that's going to be blasting through the southern plains, basically behaving like a bore. A bunch of cold air, blue northern cold front surging to the south. This dry cold frontal passage is definitely going to increase the wildfire threat across the Colorado foothills and the Wyoming foothills as well. This cold front will come through. It'll increase the winds out ahead of it, out of the westerly direction. That's what happened last Saturday when the Cal Wood Fire developed and then raced down the foothills, crossing Highway 36 to the north of Boulder. Fire crews are still battling the fires up here in the foothills. The Cal Wood Fire has been kept below 10,000 acres so far, but definitely could expand rapidly with this cold front coming through tonight, through tomorrow, and the lee cyclogenesis resulting in an acceleration of winds. So this crashing cold front could prevent that severe weather threat from materializing down there in the Texas Panhandle. Just, and really the NAM doesn't show any storms developing down there. It's probably going to be a dry cold front that comes through the southern plains. It is, however, showing the convection all the way down to northwestern Missouri there, central and eastern Iowa. And I just got an update that the new day 2 outlook is out, so we'll take a look at that as well. First, though, I want to show you a couple of snow maps. So these are what the snow maps are showing. And this is why you've got those winter storm warnings upgraded for the Sheridan foothills just to the west of Sheridan, to the southwest of Billings. Definitely double-digit snowfall totals approaching 2 feet up there in the mountains. Outside of Missoula as well, up near Yellowstone. Definitely going to get hammered by this storm. And the NAM is showing that axis of snow straddling the South Dakota-North Dakota border, but definitely has trended south since yesterday. The GFS was showing a stripe further north across North Dakota, but it looks like northern South Dakota is going to win out in these snowfall totals. I think Fargo, you're probably going to get hammered as well from this. Aberdeen, Watertown, probably north of Watertown areas up a little closer to Wahpeton. Wahpeton's going to get hammered up here north central. South Dakota Faith is going to get slammed by this, likely a foot of snow across northern South Dakota. Even a little bit of snow in the northern Colorado foothills of this, but mostly it's going to be a dry cold frontal passage further south. The snow, though, in the Colorado foothills is definitely going to arrive Saturday night. This is the forecast snow map through Saturday. So this is the next wave that's coming down the pipe from the northwest. And this will definitely fill in the Colorado foothills as well. Let's see what the new GFS shows for snowfall totals here in Colorado with that lee cyclogenesis forecast to happen. And there it is. There's the snow filling in. And this is great news for these wildfire zones here with the Mullen Fire right near the Colorado-Wyoming border. You've got the Cameron Peak Fire just to the south of that, to the west of Fort Collins. The Cal Wood Fire as well, a little further south. This is decent moisture here with that setup Saturday night through Sunday. This is the stripe of snow that'll pop out here as well with some lee cyclogenesis happening. Far northeastern Colorado could get a foot of snow up near the Lake McConaughey area, at least according to this. Even Raton Pass gets double-digit snowfall totals, and this could even develop into the Texas Panhandle. The GFS is showing a stripe of winter storm warning criteria snow into the Texas Panhandle with this system. So this is one to watch. This is the GFS forecast out far enough so that we could see what type of snow is going to happen this weekend. Let's see what the European model shows. 12Z, we'll go to the 0-0 from last night. There we go. And the European has Colorado getting hammered by this storm as well. And the European even has The maximum even further south, the San Juans, down to west of the Sangre de Cristos there in northern New Mexico getting hammered. Hopefully this happens. We really need this across the Colorado Rockies and the foothills. The European has less of a signal developing across the high plains as the GFS, and it has almost a lack of snowfall in the central and southern mountains here of Wyoming. But the European is definitely showing that as well. We can look at the differences between the two models, even though we're very focused on the severe weather for now. Look at this thing digging way down to the south near the Four Corners. So this is a very good setup for a big-time snow and a prolonged period of upslope snow across the Colorado foothills and the Rockies and the Front Range here, and even that upslope snow extending down into northern New Mexico. And it looks like a prolonged period of snow through early next week. Now look at this double-barreled Vortex, one coming down into the Dakotas. Another bowling ball getting swung around the south side of this. But this is the pattern shift that we really need here across the Colorado Rockies to help mitigate this threat. But there's going to be this Vortex that's going to intensify. It's going to take this one along with it. Hopefully there'll be some precip with that cutoff low down in Southern California. It doesn't look like it right now. By Sunday morning, we're going to start to get upslope snow increasing out there in northeastern Colorado. Look at that stripe of decent snow. And anytime you get a cutoff low that intensifies down near the Four Corners region, definitely can lead to a period of prolonged upslope. And that stripe of snowfall that extends well to the west of the Continental Divide as well. So this is looking like a prolonged upslope snow event on Sunday, including the Denver area and to the south of Denver. Look at this monster 1041 high building up here. Basically the pressure gradient between this low in the southern high plains and this monster high in the north. Easterly upslope winds are going to be encouraged for even into Monday morning. And we could start to get the development of some severe weather. We're going to have to watch the severe weather potential in Dixie Alley for that next week. But look at this, even frozen precipitation down through the southern plains. So this is winter weather that's going to dig south into the Texas Panhandle, into the southern high plains. Oklahoma could get an icing event there with some shallow cold air extending off to the southeast. Monster 1036 high, prolonged upslope continuing down into central and northern New Mexico. Could get quite a bit down there in the mountains outside of Albuquerque as well. It's looking a bit like a sheared out system where the cold air dominates. So I'm not really seeing an incredible Dixie Alley signal. Unless this storm system can eject the middle to late portion of next week across the southern U.S., there is a chance that there could be a Dixie Alley event the later part of next week. It looks like with this monster vort trying to form over the Hudson Bay area, with the northwest flow reinvigorating that ridge axis forming over the northeastern Pacific, as we discussed, is probably going to happen this year. Interesting cutoff system down there, a little bit removed from the rest of the flow. So if that ejects like a bowling ball across Dixie Alley the later portion next week, we're going to have to watch this in the lower Mississippi River Valley for when that system finally ejects. Hopefully after dropping a ton of snow there in the Colorado Rockies. But there definitely is a chance, even though this is out in fantasy land. Moisture probably not the greatest, but there's a chance there could be a Dixie Alley severe weather threat the later portion of next week. Nice moisture axis with dew points in the 70s, but that is definitely out there in fantasy land. I lose my degree for talking about this probably, but we don't have any rules here, which is good. But look at the European. It also has that system cutting off out there in 7 to 10 days in the southern plains, and then ejecting across the lower Mississippi River Valley. So we're going to have to watch this toward the end of next week for a potential outbreak of severe weather across Dixie Alley. But first, we got to get through the potential outbreak of severe weather tomorrow across Iowa. That's Wednesday morning, Tuesday evening, so that was yesterday evenings. There's the system that could lead to severe weather across Iowa. European also has that warm front lifting up to near the I-80 corridor in central and eastern Iowa tomorrow. it has, it's not as accurate with the dew points, of course. So again, back to the target area for tomorrow. Conditional tornado threat tomorrow, central and eastern Iowa, along the I-80 corridor. My plan is to leave here this afternoon, head toward that target area. There is a new day 2 outlook, it appears. No, it's not out yet. But the convective outlook from early this morning actually has that 2% tornado risk even into southwestern Wisconsin, forecasting that warm frontal zone to lift further north, well to the north of I-80, even far southeastern corner of Minnesota, southwestern Wisconsin. Definitely could have be in that tornado risk. A lot of us are anxiously awaiting a new 2 p.m. Hopefully broils will do us a favor. Big fan of broils. So there is a new outlook, and it is still a marginal risk. There is still that tornado probability has been shifted a little bit south of the zone here in the new one. But this is the new, the tornado probabilities for the new outlook. Still 2%, basically just to the east and to the southeast of Des Moines. Forecasting that cold air to be a bit more dense and probably for that warm front to not lift too much further north in the I-80 corridor. Still, though, southwestern Wisconsin is included in the risk. Northwestern Illinois, back into central Iowa, even into far northern Missouri has that tornado risk. So that's the new outlook. We'll definitely keep an eye on this throughout the day. I'll let you guys know my storm chasing plans. We also have to keep an eye on these winter weather alerts in the northern Dakotas, from the northern high plains off to the east. But I'm going to get ready here. Gizmo and I are going to get ready to hit the road. We're going to make the final decision here in the next hour or two whether we're going to head off to the east. But definitely we do have a big winter storm coming in here Saturday night through, especially on Sunday, in the Colorado foothills, including Denver. And that's going to be a much needed pattern shift that hopefully drops enough moisture to shut down these wildfires that are ravaging the Colorado foothills and portions of the mountains. So thank you everybody for joining me for this weather report. I definitely hope that you're able to join me and storm chase along with me tomorrow during this event, and then I'm going to double back and then intercept the snow on Sunday, possibly into Monday here across the central and southern Rockies. So thank you everybody. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Never stop chasing.